All right, I think we might kick off now anyway. All right, well, yeah, welcome everyone that's here. I think I recognise all the names. I think you all know me already, but yeah, these are our Lectora sort of product community support sessions we've been doing. Trying to do these once a month and just go through some sort of common support stuff that we see popping up, as well as some new features sometimes, and just a bit of a chat about what's going on with Lectora and what's new. We did our last session. We did a little bit about getting some echo back there. Yeah, we did a little bit about importing from PowerPoint and how that all works, and a couple of things to do with that. I wanted to expand a bit on that, on one part of that today as well, so we can have a look at that. And then we've got a quick look at one of the sort of new features. It's been around for a while, but they've sort of brought it up to speed in desktop as well and made some changes. So we'll look at those. And then a couple of sort of common support things I've seen just in general with troubleshooting and stuff like that. So we'll jump in from there, kick through here. So the main thing there with the PowerPoint stuff, like I said last time, we showed how to sort of import from PowerPoint, what happens when you do that, how it all works. There were two sort of different methods we were looking at there that we often see, where either people have existing training that exists as a PowerPoint file, or if you're purposely using PowerPoint sort of as a storyboarding mechanism for SMEs or anyone, because obviously probably a lot more people have and use PowerPoint than Lectora, so they can set up PowerPoint storyboards and stuff like that, which you can then save some time by importing that as well. So I wanted to focus a little bit more on that today, and certain things you can do to set up the PowerPoint file or build it a certain way in the first place to make that easier to import into your Lectora file as well. Have a quick look at that. I've got a couple of examples there. So a couple of considerations which I'll show you in the file as well. When we're doing this, obviously the main thing is your PowerPoint files often look very different from your Lectora files. Template-wise, PowerPoint doesn't need a header and a footer necessarily with buttons and all that sort of menus and stuff like that. So your screen region that you've got to sort of work with is sometimes very different. So knowing where that screen area is going to be in the PowerPoint itself can help SMEs or whoever's actually building the PowerPoint file know where to put objects that aren't going to sort of overlap with other stuff in the course. So saves you that little step of having to sort of move things around or tweak things as well. So anything that can be done on the PowerPoint side, if possible, makes it a bit easier as far as positioning and size and fonts and things. It saves you time once you're in Lectora, and you can use Lectora for the interactive fun stuff as well. Another thing there is just to do with your common or global objects. So obviously things like buttons and stuff like that often will just live in the header and footer. So if you've got that considered already, that's fine. But other things like, say, your page title in your course, that's obviously going to be somewhere on the screen. Obviously want it in the same spot most of the time. And you can have that set up in the PowerPoint as well to keep that sort of out of the way. And whether or not you've got that as a global object in Lectora, you can have it just as an aspect there in the PowerPoint, so people know not to put something in the way of that as well. And outside of that, obviously, there's a lot more interactive stuff and different types of assets you can do in Lectora versus what you do in PowerPoint, but doesn't mean you can't have part of that set up in PowerPoint to save you time once you're building. So again, things to do with positioning of objects, layering objects, all that sort of stuff. You can save a bit of time on that end, which is something that can be done in PowerPoint, so anyone can place an object or position it, versus adding your actions and all your other stuff to make it a bit more interactive after that. Okay, so to just jump in there, I've got a file to have a look at. Just bring this up here. Where's my file? So here's an actual PowerPoint file. I haven't got it open, that would help. Over here. Okay, let me bring that up. I think it's getting confused because I'm presenting a PowerPoint and also opening PowerPoint. So here's my PowerPoint file I've got. Basically, I did a couple of steps for this first, which anyone who's out there using a template, or if you've already got your theme or something like that set up in Lectora, there's a little quick step you can do first, where what I've basically done was as if I had a course in Lectora, and I just screenshot just the main blank page of that. So with the page title there, the buttons, the header and the footer, and I've just essentially used that as the background in this PowerPoint. So this stuff up here, the header and footer and logo and everything, they're just an image in the background, but it's showing me in PowerPoint what space I have to actually work with. So particularly in this this example, we've got buttons that sort of overlap a little bit from footers and stuff like that. So if we were only working with this little area here, you may have something go down and overlap one of the buttons or vice versa. So it's basically, we've got the same shell here for our PowerPoint as we would in Lectora. Now to make that work properly, what I did have to do was, firstly, when I opened PowerPoint, I just made sure I set the screen size in the PowerPoint file to match what my Lectora file would be, which if you don't know, you can just do that in the design tab in PowerPoint here. So my slide size, I've just set to custom, which I set as the Lectora size. And then I brought in my screenshot, which was just a direct screenshot from my Lectora file that I set up. And I've just added that as the background by going format background and add a picture in there. So any page I make, if I'm just duplicating screens and stuff like that in this PowerPoint, I'll have that same sort of space to work with as well. Now, the same thing goes for maybe sometimes in your course, you've got different pages with different types of layouts. Even if you're doing sort of pop-up screens and stuff like that, you can also have that done in the PowerPoint. That's just a bit more sort of fiddling with the pages themselves once you bring them into Lectora as well. But having done all that sort of step, I've now got a PowerPoint sort of template, if you will, that looks the same as my Lectora template, and I can then add assets that are going to be unique to each page. So starting out really simply, I've just got sort of like an intro page with a bit of text. That's obviously easy enough, probably just as easy to add a bit of text in Lectora as it is in PowerPoint. But again, for an SME or someone who's got access to this, but not Lectora or not familiar enough with Lectora to add things in the right way, they can have that done as well. Going back down a little bit further, so obviously layout wise and things like that, that's where you can start to have things set up a little bit better. Text on the left, image on the right, whatever total layout you want to do. If you've got different columns, different things set up, you can have those set up in your PowerPoint as well. That way you don't have to then do the work of setting the text, resizing, aligning it, putting the image where it needs to be. The other benefit to that, which we've had in projects and things like that before, is that the SME or whoever's sort of working with the storyboard can source the image and place it in the page and see how it's going to fit as well. So we often have trouble where a selected image doesn't quite fit on the page, and obviously the person setting it up isn't looking at the page itself, they're just looking at the text and the image they want to use. And that way they can visually see how that's going to be placed. So it saves you a step later if they say, oh, actually I wanted this image to be a bit smaller or moved over here. They've sort of done that step, or at least made the start on that as well. So another quick simple one, and you can do that same for any sort of static type layout. So anything that's text and image based or some other kind of icons or assets and stuff. If there's no interactivity, this is basically done as much as it will be in Lectora already. So you don't have to do any more sort of fiddling with that one. Now, I did mention as well, if you're making sort of more interactive pages, so for example, like a click and reveal or something that's a little bit more complex, you would think, okay, I'm not going to do much of that in the PowerPoint. I'm just going to tell you what images to use, what text to use, and then you figure that part out as well. What I've actually done in this screen here is set it up as if it was going to be in Lectora. I've got sort of a little bit about cybersecurity best practices, and I've set up a quick icon for each of these basically. Behind each of these as well, I've actually popped in the text that I want to use as if this was going to be a click and reveal. So this is positioned exactly how I will want it in Lectora, as well as the layering. So I've got text sitting there behind these icons. They're all layered correctly. They're placed where I want them to be. When I bring this into PowerPoint, I've then got everything in place exactly where I want it. I've got the text where I want it, the icons where I want it, and all I need to do then is fiddle with the actions, which is obviously the main part we want to use Lectora for there. So things like that, any type of interaction, even if it's a click and reveal or things like that, a bit more complex, we can still get the bones of that set up on the PowerPoint side without you then having to sort of figure out where are these icons going to fit, how many are there, what text is being used, and that's really just skipping all those sort of steps in the Lectora side of things as well. And then one more quick sample one was just basically a video, which again can be imported the same way. I placed my instruction the same way. This is really no different than the text and image one. I've got my video placed in there and set how I want it. Obviously in Lectora you may do something else where you want the video to pop up full screen or something, or they can simply use the full screen button to do that. But again, just another layout you can do, and making sure that I'm not sort of blocking off any part of the UI for that to make sure it all fits in as well. So that's the PowerPoint side of things. So from this PowerPoint, if someone was setting this up as a storyboard, anyone could have done this if they know how to use PowerPoint and they've got the assets, which I've grabbed all these assets from our asset library, icons and things like that. That part can be done pretty much, and then you're ready to pop it into your Lectora as well. So
I'll just jump in there. We'll also, just with that slide 3 with the pop-up side of things, there is 2 other ways that people have been utilizing it, where they don't add the text behind the lock or the cog, and what they do is they'll add the pop-up text down in the notes section and just let the developer know that any pop-up text is sitting in that notes, which will be in the PowerPoint slide. And the other way that people do it also is they might just add extra screens in there after number 3 saying, and put down in the notes saying pop-up text, because there's a lot more text, and they'll create a whole new slide for it saying, see slide 4, see slide 5, and it guides them off to those other screens. So there's the other 2 ways of looking at it, where it won't import that stuff, but at least it lets the developer know that there's more text to be put in. So there's different ways of doing it depending on your SMEs and your developer.
Yeah, and I mean, it's easy enough with that type of thing as well. If it's a type of interaction where maybe each of these brings up their own pop-up with a full screen of text, for example, you can have each of those set up in the PowerPoint, and when you import them, there'll be different screens in Lectora or different pages in Lectora, but they're placed the way that you want them, so you can just grab that content and move it over onto one screen, so sort of merge them. So it's still saving you time having to sort of set up each of those separate pieces or separate screens. It's just working with, obviously in Lectora, you've got layering, and with a click and reveal, you'll have overlapping objects where you can't see them all at once. It looks messy when you're building it, but obviously the user's only going to see one at a time. And whereas that would look messy in the PowerPoint, you've got them sort of individual screens to see what's going to happen there as well. So still saves time and still make sure everything's going to sort of fit. So we have that thing where someone's done 1 or 2 examples, and then the 3rd example's got 3 times as much text and it doesn't fit anywhere. Whereas if they've done that in the PowerPoint file, they would see that it doesn't fit either, and either work on the text or mention it or something like that. So little things like that can pop up as well. So just to show you quickly what this is going to do, this is another example one I've got, but I'll open up a new one and just import this to show you what happens as well when that's in there, and then you can see the layering and that sort of stuff as well. Bring that up. I could add those as new pages to the example I've already got, but I'll start a new one. Add in. This is sort of a little recap from last month as well. So if I'm starting a new project and I want to just import a PowerPoint file, I can do that from this initial screen here. Pop it open. Like the PowerPoint option, sometimes it needs me to click off and back to bring it up. Yeah. So I can search for my source one that I'm just using. Here. Oh, it doesn't like them being open when you're actually doing that. So let me just close that in the background. Always forget that. Go. That opens, going to make a new course for me here. I won't worry about any of the sort of transition stuff. I've actually set that one to be the exact size. So any of that sort of advanced options and stuff are going to carry over. The image format and everything like that's fine as well. We can just pop that in. Okay. See how that works. Now, the only thing that's different here is obviously the background image that I've used in PowerPoint, which I've set up as my file. It is going to come into the PowerPoint, into the Lectora file as an asset, but the way it's sort of done, because it was set up as the background in PowerPoint, what it should do is just have that as a single object inherited, which I can then just either delete or note that I've got to sort of do something with that. Otherwise, it's set up in the background of Lectora instead, without having to have those sort of things overlapping, because I can then just add that theme in, which is the same one again. So you can import this into your existing template file, which may be the one that you've pulled that background from as well. So for example, this slide 1, you can see everything's there, but the only thing that's actually here is this text box. So if I go on my slide, I have a look at the properties. That should be sitting there under my background, which is set to inherit from the overall course. So you know that each of these is the same one. So that's actually set up on the top level here. Pop that open. And I can change my background here. So instead of this image, I can just say none. It removes it, but everything's still going to be placed where I want it to be. And then I can just grab that theme, which I had. So in the case of a template, you would just have that template open anyway. I pop that same theme back in. It's now going to look the same and do everything else the same, except these are all now actual objects in here. So I've got my screen here. In my screenshot, I actually added my page title as a separate object. So that's not in the theme, but I can then add that here as well. This is a heading, a logo, all my shapes and everything are all active, and that's all set up properly. Plus my text and everything's there as well. So moving down these, Again, this one's nice and easy. If you had done everything you need to do there, you don't have to fiddle around with it. Even fonts and stuff can be handled there. If your PowerPoint's using the right font, you don't have to worry about Lectora doing it. Obviously, some sort of alignment thing going on here. I'll just pop that one down depending on the screen size. There will be some sort of scaling differences sometimes between PowerPoint and Lectora. So you can see the font size there ended up being a bit bigger than it needed to be, but I can probably drop that down. And that's sort of more matching what I had there. Likewise with my slide here, we just need to then look at these images and set them up. So I probably didn't use the best image examples here because they did actually have transparent backgrounds, which I just masked over in PowerPoint, but with your actual icons, you would have an image with a background as well. So, which I can still do in Lectora and just pop a background behind it as well. And now these are all set up and layered correctly. I can do click and reveals, whatever I do. For this page, for example, I'd probably just have these just naturally covering each thing and then have them be, when you click on them, they just disappear and that shows it. If you wanted more of a flip card example, you could just then also add actions to the text blocks instead to then show the icon again, and it'll just alternate between the two. So just to show one quick example of that without worrying about the seeing them through each other, I'll just quickly add these actions in. And let me just pop that in. Action. And I can just say hide this object, just hides itself. And that was for picture 4, I think. So then my text that lives behind that, I can also just add an action to that, which when I click on there, I want to show picture 4. And that should then work if I preview. Again, just ignoring the layering part. Click on it, hides, click on it back, it comes back. And you could do that times 4, done. Basically, interactions done there, and you didn't have to figure out how they're all going to fit, move your icons and all that sort of stuff around. So little things like that. Obviously, you can have much more complex pages with more complex click and reveals, but the concept's the same there. Getting your assets in the screen in a way where the SME is happy with where they're placed. Obviously, they may not be sort of visual designers. They're just sort of popping content in. So even then, you may have to sort of tweak things around, but it can be an ongoing sort of process where the people setting up those storyboards sort of know where things should be and place them correctly to save you that time as well. Yeah, kind of it. Are there any questions on that sort of PowerPoint stuff? Points things out a little bit more. Okay, leave that there if we need to look at it again. Let me jump back over here. Okay, so that was sort of the main thing we were looking at for this one, just moving on from the PowerPoint side of things. Moving over to just more sort of support stuff. This first one's not really necessarily a support question, but more to do with an update in Lectora. So let me just move it here. Button states, they've been around for ages in Lectora. I know people who used it for a while. We got excited when they finally added the disabled state, so we didn't have to manually add a separate button that you couldn't click on, all that sort of stuff. Lectora Online has actually had visited state and selected state in there for a little while, which has now come to desktop as well. So they've sort of matched up parity there. You can also add more of your own states for whatever reason. So you can add your own custom states just from my little screenshot here, which I'll show you in Lectora as well. You've got your main 4, which you're probably used to already. Visited and selected are underneath those, and you can use this little plus symbol here to add as many as you want. So whatever type of state you may want for whatever reason, you can add that, and then there's actions and triggers to sort of change to that state if needed. So that sort of thing as well. These 4 or these 6 really have their own sort of initial default setup for how they work, but then your own custom ones, you can control that if you need to as well. So I just wanted to go through sort of what each state means, because I think even with the main 4, sometimes it's not super clear, and how they work and how you can set them up as well. So I'll jump back over to my other screen. A little example one here with some buttons. So I've just thrown in some text buttons. That same template that I threw in is there still. So basically with the states, let me just grab one and go to my style tab. You can see these here in the states option as well. So if I pop that open here, I'll go through what each one of those do. So the normal state is just whatever the button looks like when you first get to the screen. No one's clicked it, no one's done anything with it. That's what it looks like. That's your base sort of state for the button. Your over state is the hover effect. So we're all pretty used to that sort of thing. When the mouse covers the button without clicking, it's going to change color or whatever to indicate it's interactive. Everyone's pretty used to that as well. Common thing for that is just to change the color. Lectora used to do a sort of a default thing where it would sort of add a shadow or something as well, so it makes it a bit more obvious. You've got your own sort of options here between fill style, outline, color, weight, all that sort of stuff. You can also add shadows and things like that to certain states as well. Each of these states within Lectora to start with will be automatically picked from your first color of your button. So if you set up a button and make it blue, it's going to decide the over state is a slightly different blue. The down state's an even darker blue usually. And then the disabled state is like a faded or transparent version of the button as well. So it defaults those automatically, but if you want to customize those yourself, there'll be a little button here to change that. These are all set to custom, so we've got a little wrench there. If you haven't changed it, it'll say auto instead, and that means that Lectora has decided what color that is. The benefit to that, leaving it as auto, if you're happy with those colors, is if you down the track change all your buttons to red, it's going to change each one to a different version of that color as well. So the over will then be a slightly different red instead. The down will be a darker red, and vice versa. Whereas if you've customized them yourself, then changing that initial color won't affect the new states. So you've got a bit of control there once you know how that works. On top of that, each state as well also has the option to enable it or disable it. So you may, for some reason, not want a hover state or something like that, or you don't want the down state. You can basically turn it off. And that's true for these sort of extra ones as well. But any new button you've added in by default will have everything, those first 4 enabled, and then you've got to fiddle around with the others as well. So overstate's slightly different. I've gone really obvious with the colors here just so we can see it when we test it. So over is going to go red. The down state is one that's often a bit confusing, but it's basically the color you're going to see when you're actually clicking the button down. So it won't stay like that. It's just as you click it. So often you only see it as a little flash because it's like you're clicking it down. So that one I see often where people say, oh, I've made my down state green and I never see the green or it disappears. It's because it's, if you hold the mouse down, you'll see it. Otherwise it won't come up there, or you see it really quickly as a flash. Disabled, again, we probably sort of know that one. That was a big sort of change that was really good to add in. Instead of having to manually do it, the disabled button often obviously looks different. The default's there to sort of fade it out a little bit as well. The other thing with that is that it's not clickable. So disabled state just doesn't even come up with a cursor or anything. It's just a flat object, so people can pretty clearly see they can't interact with it. That's a pretty common one for buttons. So you might disable your next button, vice versa, all that sort of stuff. Really simple to do that one as well. Now, these new states are pretty handy. Visited, again, I've gone really obvious with it. There's a purple and a green there. The visited state means it's been clicked before. The selected state means it was just clicked, so it's the last one that was clicked. And the way that that sort of operates in Lectora now is that they kind of alternate between the two. So if you click it once, it goes selected first, and if you click it again, it changes to visited, and it'll retain that state. So if you come back and leave and go to a new page, it'll sort of click between those two. The hover effect still works the same, but it's basically replacing the normal state for the button with either one of these, whichever was clicked. So it allows you to tell if there's 10 buttons on the screen, people know they've clicked these 5 and not this one, all that sort of stuff, which again used to be something we'd do manually and have to set up new buttons or put a tick next to it or something. That's now an option just directly in there. So really easy to set up and really easy to play around with that one. And that's basically it. Those two sort of are set up in there. Again, you have to make sure you tick this little box here next to them to enable them. And to show you what they look like, just really quickly in example. So normal states, we bring our mouse over them, we've got hover states. If we click and hold one, that's our down state. If I let go, it's now selected. If I go to another one, hover's still here. This one still hovers, but it just stays green otherwise. If I click my next one, this is my new down state. Now that one's selected. If I go back and click another one, you can see I now get my purple. So you can pretty much sort of, they alternate between the two now. All of these states as well, you can set actions to manually do that. So if you wanted something else in the course to dictate whether a button was selected or something like that, like a variable or something, you can actually manually say, if this variable's true, set this button to visited or selected or whatever it ends up being. But without doing any of those actions, they just alternate between. And it'll remember that as well. If I go to another page, this one's set up exactly the same. It's got more buttons there. If I go back, all my buttons are still green, so I still know that they're selected. So that sort of stuff's really easy to set up now, especially for longer interactions where they've got clicked 10 buttons or something. They know which ones they've clicked. And all of this works properly with image buttons, whatever other type of button you want. You set a new image for each one, not just text buttons. And it's really good sort of feature that we've now got in desktop as well. Really handy to use. So yeah, and outside of that, I didn't mention, or I mentioned at the start, again, you can add as many of those as you want. You may have a state to say, I can never think of an example, but maybe there's a different button state to say that they haven't done another section or something. But yeah, when I have a better example for when you would use that, I will bring it up. But yeah, you've got options to add as many as you want. So that's kind of it for the button states as well. Okay. Outside of that, a couple of other support things. This is just in general troubleshooting. We've had a couple of things the last couple of weeks of just figuring out what's wrong with pages or trying to do what you can. I just wanted to mention those. Is there any questions on the button state stuff before we move on there? Everyone's happy with that? Cool. So just in general with troubleshooting interactions and things like that, you'll often have things where you're setting up multiple buttons and then say one of them isn't doing what you're wanting it to do. A really common thing that I probably start with support stuff is if you've got one that's working, obviously look at that one and check exactly what that one's doing. Because Lectora has so many options and different tick boxes and things for different objects, you may miss something that you've changed for one of them and not the others, even if it's a small checkbox within a menu or something or other. That's always a quick one to do. So if you know you've got one that is working, obviously look at that one and compare it. If it's a series of buttons and one of them works and the other doesn't, firstly just check that it's set up the same way as the other one. And then depending on how much other stuff you've added into that, if you've got actions and conditions and things, make sure they're pointing to the correct one and all that sort of stuff as well. So it's often a really minor little setting where you think, oh, I wouldn't think that would have made a difference, but it's set very specifically with your timing and your different sort of interactions and stuff. So that's sort of one little tip that I've had a little bit in different cases this week as far as setting up, even one to do with the button states as well. So someone was having trouble with the button states and expecting it to work one way, and they'd missed the little enable tick on one of them and one button on one state. So yeah, you never know sort of how deep you have to look at some of those if you've set them up. And the other side of that, really quickly, just relevant to this as well as other things. Sometimes if you've copied things over from other courses or if you've used the theme and it's been changed a bit, you'll get buttons or objects or something that have just gone buggy. So text, if you've copied in bullet points from Word or something like that, Lectora doesn't like them unless you've set up the bullet points yourself in Lectora, and it just gets a bit of an issue with that text block. If things are happening and you've checked everything and it all looks fine, it looks like it's set up the exact same as another object that's working, just delete it and add it again. That's a really quick one. People often don't want to delete something if they've already got it there. They've already set it up and they're worried about that. Copy the other one over, try it again, re-add it so you know that you've selected each object. I had that exact same thing this week as well, where something was pulled in from an old course and from a theme in Lectora as well. So there may have been an issue with the theme itself, where a button's just not behaving properly. I just deleted that one and copied over the one next to it, and it worked after that. So yeah, when all else fails, just get rid of it and try it again, add it in again. That's often sort of where I point to with some of that stuff. Does happen. There's lots of really complex setups and things like that with assets, so you never know where something's just had a funny little issue in the background. So that was sort of the main thing to look at there. Comes up more often than you think. Text or something, just delete it and re-add it. It's always my go-to with some of that stuff, unless it's a big complicated thing you don't want to re-add. You obviously look at all other avenues first, but if it's just a button that you need to copy paste, then that's an easy way to go. Yeah, that's kind of what I had for today. Outside of that, if there's any other sort of pre-questions and things, if people had any issues, I think we normally see people send in issues beforehand. I don't think we had any this week, but we can have a look at that as well. Yeah, anything else off the back of that? Everyone's happy with that? Oh, Rachel's there.
Hey Will, how you doing?
Hey, not too bad.
I've just jumped on. I've had a meeting up until 11. So I thought I'd jump on right for the end. Okay. Thanks for joining us.
All right.
I was just going to ask you with regards to the variable that you add at the end of the module to mark it as complete in the LMS. Mm-hmm. So I'm doing a series of video demonstrations, so they don't actually have to go through a test to get then completed. It's just you've got to have got to the last slide. Yep. What I've added is what I would have added in the other one. So I've put in the variable AICC lesson status equal to complete. But that's what I've just had in all the other ones where we have had all the quizzes, as you know. Is that the same? Does it work the same way?
Yeah, so it should be, let me just bring the course open again. I can quickly throw that on one of these as well. Add an action. Oh, I haven't got this set up as a SCORM course. Give me 1 sec to tick that. That'll give me my actions back. I'll just pop it on this one. So action, yeah, basically the modifier variable is the one you're looking for. Lesson status is the one. Just double check it's not location or core lesson. Some of those, or even the CMI completion status one, sometimes people see that first and click it because it says completion status, but yeah, lesson status is the one you're looking for. And yeah, the most common one is just completed. You got to double check the case, so no capitals as well is a pretty common one. So you've got incomplete and completed, all lowercase is usually what it's looking for. So the capital C is the most common one we see.
Completed, so okay. I had complete, so
yeah,
that's good.
Sometimes it's a tiny little thing. So the LMS is very picky. that'd be the issue usually. So yeah, lowercase completed or incomplete. Depending on your system as well, you can do passed and failed. It should accept those. You just got to be careful with failed because it won't then change to any other state if you've set it as failed. It sort of locks it in unless you reset the course as well. So that's the other thing there.
How did you just then quickly change it to a SCORM?
Oh, sorry. So just on the design tab in project options.
Yeah.
You've got the project type is either standard or AICC and SCORM. If you don't have that second one selected, it won't even give you that action option to it won't show you those variables to work with. It won't give you the lesson status or score or any of those. I
kind of fumbled across that and when I can't even see that variable, and then somehow I didn't go that way, so that's on though, so that's good.
No, I think most courses these days people have that set up as a default from an old course or a template, so you never even think to check it, but that's the first one to have a look at as well. Yeah, that should cover that, hopefully.
Brilliant. Thanks, Will.
Cool. Okay. Anyone else have any other questions? Otherwise, we're all good for today. Oh, good. No worries, guys. Well, thanks for joining us. Yeah, again, we're trying to do these sort of monthly. It's usually the first, what day is it? Thursday? First Thursday of the month we try and do. And we'll have different sort of topics, and sometimes there's new features that pop up we'll point out. Or yeah, if I've had the same support issue all month, then I'll bring it up because people obviously having some sort of issue coming up that's pretty common, and we can look at those as well. So obviously any other questions you have, let us know, and yeah, we can cover them in the session or separately, whatever happens.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yes. See you on the next one.
Cheers.